Dun 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 dun. Okay, that's enough. Hi guys, my name is Alana and I'm so excited because I started this channel, a lot of you will probably not know this because the video is no longer up. I started this channel originally talking about movies that I'd watched and really enjoyed, but my first video was a Rocket Man video and I was really blown away by the Elton John, not exactly a biopic, but it had like elements of fantasy as well. It was also a musical. It incorporated a lot of elements which really made it stand out from a lot of the biopics that we're seeing in the last couple of years. So I started my channel basically talking about Rocket Man, and then I just moved to a bunch of different movies, and then I decided to go the normal direction by posting videos about my life. Then I post a few videos in Turkish. A lot of you don't know, but I'm half Turkish, and now I have gone back to my roots, it seems, and I'm talking about another piece of media, which is Star Trek. I love Star Trek. Star Trek changed my life, and I will give you a little anecdote about how I got started on the Star Trek craze, obsession, fanaticism, is that a word? I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. My mom and I were looking for something to watch. It was like, what, 2021, 2022? I'm not sure. But there was nothing to watch on TV. We're usually YouTube people, so my mom was flipping through, still found nothing to watch. She went on Netflix, and coincidentally, the original Star Trek was on with Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, obviously, with Dr. McCoy, and we started watching it. I was obsessed, like literally obsessed. The original series was like my child, my baby. I love the original series so much, and when it was finished, I was watching the episodes out of order that I really liked, but then I knew I had to move on. I had to go to the next generation. The next generation and me, we got off on a rough start, I'll just say. I had to drop it, and then I said, no, if I'm gonna, that's how I am. If I'm committed, if I'm a fan of something, I will read every book in the series, watch every adaptation. So I was like, no. To be immersed in the Star Trek lore, in the Star Trek universe, I need to watch every single adaptation. So I finished The Next Generation. I like The Next Generation a lot. When I watch shows, even if the characters are unlikable, I have to sort of like form some bond with them. So I had formed a bond with the cast, the crew of the Enterprise on The Next Generation, even though it wasn't my favorite. And then when I moved to DS9, I was sad to leave them behind. I was like, I miss Jean-Luc already. And then we got to Emissary, which is the first episode of Deep Space Nine, and I was hooked immediately. There was no going back. I was head over heels in love. DS9 now takes the throne. It is my favorite Trek, and I recently began Voyager. I'm well immersed in season 2. I'm almost finished season 2, but I took a break because I went back and now I'm watching Deep Space Nine all over again. And I posted a TikTok video. I'm going quick, sorry. I posted a TikTok video where I was reciting one of the scenes. I think it was from season 2. It was The Circle, where Kira is being sent away to a new job, and I posted that scene on TikTok.
Am I disturbing anything? Stick around, you can help me cry into my synthale.
And at first it didn't do well, so then I reposted it, and then a lot of you found me from that video, and it got a lot of love, and the Deep Space Nine community on TikTok really like opened their arms and like welcomed me in. So now here we are. I asked a lot of you in a video I made. I got a little idea. If I were to make a Deep Space Nine themed YouTube video, A, would you guys watch it? And B, what topic or theme would you want it to be about? I'm doing a little brainstorming and I just wanted to see something. So leave me some ideas, some topics. What do you want to see me potentially talk about in the comments down below? Okay? I can't wait to read them. Bye for now. If I made a YouTube video all about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, would you guys watch it? What would you want it to be about? And a lot of you gave really great comments, so then I felt bad because a lot of you wanted me to talk about why Avery Brooks sort of distanced himself from the franchise. I didn't want to get too much into like the actor's personal life, so I won't be going really in depth about that. But then a lot of you were wanting me to talk about like all things Ferengi and the lore, and a lot of you wanted me to talk about just specific characters like Quark or Kira or O'Brien, and I felt bad just picking some of your guys' comments. So I was like, for my first video especially, I want to incorporate all the crew of Deep Space Nine because we all love them. We all found something to like in that crew. So I thought today, as you have seen the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about my top 15 favorite Deep Space Nine episodes. Okay, I tried to do 5 episodes. I couldn't narrow the list down. I tried to do 10. I thought 20 would be too much, so I picked a number in the middle, and that was 15. You know why I am beginning with this video? Because that means I can safely talk about all of our favorite characters, and we can just blab about Deep Space Nine, because TikTok, unfortunately, I believe is getting banned, and I'm gonna lose all of you, and I don't want to lose all of you. I have no one around me to talk about Deep Space Nine to. My mom is tired of hearing me talk about it. None of my friends watch Star Trek or specifically Deep Space Nine. No other family watched it, so I just turned to TikTok. And now they tell me that TikTok is leaving. I'm still kind of bitter about that. So I said, let's continue the party. Let's not stop the party. Let's continue the party on YouTube. So without further ado, let me begin this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I will keep the Deep Space Nine train going. I have a lot of videos lined up that I'm sure you guys are gonna like. My next video, I'm gonna give you a little hint, a little spoiler. It's not gonna be about the main characters at all, but our favorite guest stars, our favorite recurring characters. So I gave you that little tidbit, and I'll leave it at that. Okay. In a lot of my videos, I also have a series on TikTok where I talk about the main characters' best episodes, in my opinion. And I always say in these videos, I'll put a clip up that I'm looking at a list. I took notes. We're getting serious. Looking through my notes, I think this is... I was lying through my teeth. I don't know why I said that. I was not looking at a list. I was going off the top of my head. And I wanted to wing it when doing this video, but then I thought, no. Let's get professional. So this time I'm not lying. I do have a list actually. And I'm going by, pay attention to this part. Don't get confused. I am going by the numbers that Netflix uses. So I know on like IMDb or like Wikipedia, maybe, for example, my first episode I'm going to talk about is Progress, and it says that it's episode 14 on Netflix. But when you go on IMDb, for example, it might be episode 13 or 15. Netflix did the numbering kind of weird, I guess. So don't get confused based on that. And one last thing, what am I going to say? I didn't rank the episodes that I'm going to talk about. I'm going solely based on their season. So if it's season 1, episode 14, and then I'm going to go episode 15, 16, I'm going in order, okay? I'm not ranking them. I can't rank them. They're my babies. But I am starting with a favorite of mine, and that is Progress. I talked a lot about Progress on TikTok. I'm going to stop blabbing about Progress because I can talk about that episode till my lungs burst. It's one of my favorite episodes, not Kira-centered, although it is one of my favorite Kira-centered as well. It's one of my favorite episodes in the entire series. I hear a lot about Deep Space Nine using their budget for special effects and like makeup and background actors, and sometimes they didn't have enough budget to do like really crazy like action scenes, and I didn't know about it until a lot of you guys were pointing it out to me in the comments, or I live on Reddit, so I learned about some of that through Reddit, but it never really bothered me. I don't mind episodes or scenes where it's just characters giving monologues or just there's a lot of dialogue. It never really phases me, and I love actually more toned down, cut back, simpler episodes, because I feel like it helps us know the characters way more than just episodes where they're being badass Starfleet officers. And I feel like Progress is such a great example of that, because there's strength in being vulnerable as well. So I feel like not a lot of TV shows get the memo on that. So starting with Progress, this is one of my favorite Deep Space Nine episodes. I feel like it gives Kira that real character development that we've been waiting for, and this is, according to Netflix, episode 14 of the first season. While this is going on, Jake and Nog are forming the No J Consortium, because they started with Yamik sauce, which turned to stem bolts, which turned to having pieces of land, and I find it so funny this episode because the way that things are looking, it seems that Nog is well on his way to being a good Ferengi, because being a good Ferengi means being good at business, having good intuition when it comes to financial opportunity, and it really sets Nog up for having a promising future in Ferengi society, in Ferengi customs. Things are looking bright for him. And I always think of that scene where Quark tells Nog that he's really proud of him. It is a really moment that sticks in my head, because I think of Aaron Eisenberg's performance in Heart of Stone when he's telling Sisko why he wants to join Starfleet, because he doesn't have the lobes, he doesn't have what it takes to be a good Ferengi. It's such a good scene. I love this episode, how it sort of sets us on one path, but of course this is Deep Space Nine, so they make a whole U-turn and go down a completely different path. That's a conversation for another day. I can do a whole video about Nog. I love him. He's my baby. Rest in peace to Aaron Eisenberg. I always get so sad now when I watch Deep Space Nine and see scenes of Nog, but I don't want to dampen y'all's mood, so I won't get into it. Obviously, we're also grateful for all the work he did on Deep Space Nine specifically. He really made the show, he made the show so much better. Everyone had a role to play in this show. Everyone, I believe, suited their characters perfectly, and I don't see anyone else playing Nog, giving him that growth, that development, that empathy, that courageous sort of sometimes naivety as Aaron. So I'm not going to dampen the mood. I believe that Kira's role was originally going to be Ro Laren's role, and Michelle Forbes was going to continue. She was going to bring Ro from TNG to Deep Space Nine, I believe. And then there was some, I guess, miscommunication. I don't want to say things that are not true and make you guys believe that something was going on or some don't quote me on anything. I just know that Michelle Forbes was supposed to be on Deep Space Nine bringing Ro Laren, but then something else happened, and we got Nana as Kira, which I'm so happy about. I loved Ro Laren's character on The Next Generation. She was a real breath of fresh air. So I would have been happy with her character, but Nana, if any of you don't know, I love Nana, and I love how she played Kira. No one else could have played Kira like Nana played Kira, and we never would have had this amazing character. So I'm glad it all worked out. Why did I bring Michelle Forbes and Ro Laren into this conversation? Because this episode reminds me of that episode where Ro had to choose between her duties and the Maquis subduing the Maquis terrorists. And I feel like Kira struggled with that a long time. We especially see that in past prologue when she's dealing with Tana and the Kon Ma. There are a lot of times where the characters of Deep Space Nine have to choose between duty and their heart. And I feel like Kira really showed us that through her character, and Nana really portrayed that inner turmoil and struggle so beautifully. I can wax poetic about progress for hours, so I'm gonna skip past this episode. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. This is still season 1. It's episode 18, and that is Duet. Oh my god, I love Duet. I mentioned this on my TikTok video. I love Duet. What is there to say about Duet? A lot of you guys love Duet. What is there to say? Do I even need to get into it? No, I'm gonna leave it like that. Short and sweet. Oh, okay, I'll go back to Duet, okay? What is there to say? What is there to say? A perfect episode from start to finish. I can think of nothing wrong with that episode, and I'm really trying to think of something. No, I can't think of nothing. I'm moving on. What is a duet? It's two people in harmony, either mostly through song, but duet, you're working with each other versus against each other. So while Kira thought she was working against Maritza, they did find their way at the end, and they were actually performing a duet. What can I say about Duet? This is just another example where I can really talk about Nana, and I don't want this to just be me complimenting Nana Visitor for the entire video, but I love her. I love her so much. Nana, she has this thing, I don't know what it is about her, but she evokes such emotion in me when I'm watching her scenes. Literally, like, sometimes I forget that, like, Alana, calm down. It's just a show. It's just a TV show. It's not real. These people aren't actually suffering when they call cut. These people are going off to lunch and having coffee breaks and just chilling. But Nana really just brings me in. And oh my God, that last scene with Maritza, where we find out he's not the butcher of Galatep. Oh my God, like, this really sets up her relationship with Tekeni Gamor, and Tekeni really leads the dissident movement. I wouldn't say he's like the founder, because obviously there was that episode with Quark and his ex-lover, and she was a professor, and she was also part of the dissident movement. And behind the scenes, so many Cardassians were actually in opposition of the occupation. So just to see firsthand Maritza, like, how he crumbled when he sort of despised himself for pitying the Bajorans, because it would have been so much easier. It's so much easier to be the bad guy because you can justify anything. We see this with Gul Dukat many times. It's easy to be the bad guy because you can just tell yourself reasons and they sound perfect in your head. But just like we see with Garak in The Wire, rather than follow the crowd, to be aware that what's going on is wrong but being powerless to stop it really takes a toll on a person. And I think in that moment, this episode is obviously about Kira getting over her racism of Cardassians and realizing that they're not all the enemy. Seeing Maritza just crumble and sort of despise himself for not being like his other fellow Cardassians and being in support of the occupation, but knowing that he was helpless, hopeless, he couldn't do anything to stop it. Oh my God, oh, the performances in this episode. Oh, I loved it. Moving on to The Wire. We're now in season 2. This is episode 22. I love how in the beginning of the episode, when Julian is helping Jadzia with her plant while Keiko's away, Jadzia's like, why are you offended that Garak doesn't want to be treated? It's not like you guys are actually friends. She played that man like a fiddle. She knew that that little comment, that little snide comment would get to Julian, because Julian is of course he wants to be friends with Garak. He has trouble making friends. He shoots off at the mouth. He sometimes aggravates people so much by talking and talking and talking and talking. And then Garak is his sort of like safe haven, the place that finally he can just word vomit everything he has to say and have a receptive audience. So I always think of that scene with Julian and Miles in the runabout, and he's like, do I annoy you? I'm sorry if I talk too much, it's a nervous habit. But anyway, of course he views Garak as his friend, and he says, we've been eating lunch for a year. I mean, you would think the guy would trust me a little bit. Jadzia played him like a fiddle. She knew damn well what that little comment would do to Julian. Okay, another thing. Before I obviously get to Andrew Robinson's incredible performance, I want to give praise to like the other things I liked about the episode. That scene in the infirmary where Julian is treating Ben's vocal cords or his throat, I'm not sure, because because Ben yells at a lot of admirals, and Ben says, I'm not yelling, I'm just expressing my feelings very loudly. I love that scene because it's interactions like this that really tell you way more about a character. And like, honestly, DS9 sprinkles like little bits of these interactions in like the unlikeliest of places, or like it'll be a serious episode and then they'll give you moments of like light humor like this, and it's such a breath of fresh air that the audience is more receptive to these sort of like offhand comments and little details. Now, like, that's in the back of my mind, that Sisko has no patience when it comes to admirals, and he will always tell them his feelings. Like that little 1 minute, probably 30-second interaction told me a lot about Sisko's character. How we meet Kira Nerys in the first episode, Emissary, she is giving the Bajoran provisional government a piece of her mind. That's how we are introduced to her character. And then Miles makes a comment to Sisko, have you ever worked with Bajoran women before? You know, they're really fiery and fired up and really like outspoken about their opinions. Like, that introduced me right off the bat to the character, and I fell in love with her when she said her first line to Benjamin, which was just, yes.
You're being a fool.
Well then, don't ask my opinion next time.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. I love any mention of the Obsidian Order. I'm like fascinated by them. And I wish in Deep Space Nine we got more of a chance to like see scenes really, what is the word? Not depicting Cardassian culture or like society, because we saw a lot of that in Tribunal, how their justice system works. But I would have loved to see the Obsidian Order in their prime right before the fall of the Order, obviously. We got a lot of insight on how the Tal Shiar works with the Next Generation. We were obviously introduced to the Romulans in the original series, so we know a lot about the Romulans, and our first introduction to the Cardassians was obviously in the Next Generation. But I love how more fleshed out we got the Cardassians to be depicted. We got a lot of different examples, great portrayals of Cardassians in Deep Space Nine. But after reading Andrew Robinson's book A Stitch in Time, I'm just fascinated by the Obsidian Order, and I wish we could have gotten to see more of them in Deep Space Nine. Oh my god, I love Anna Brentane. I love him, and by love him I mean I love Paul Dooley's portrayal of him. I hated Anna Brent, but oh my god, I just need to know, if anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. Are the Deep Space Nine writers just wizards and magicians, or are they just really that good? Because I don't know if y'all clocked this, but at the end of the episode, Garrick gives a book to Julian about a time in the future where Cardassia is at war with the Klingons. And oh my god, I mean, literally, are you guys like wizards, or did you guys really set that up and plan that from season 2, episode 22? The war with the Klingons was what, the end of season 4, maybe the beginning of season 5? Like, did you guys plan that?
It's a joke? Did you plan this?
Nobody could have planned this.
If so, kudos. Like, I'm taking my hat off to you. I have watched The Wire. There's some episodes where I watch many, many times. Progress is one of them, and The Wire is definitely one of them. When you first watch The Wire, you're so focused on which of Garrick's stories are true, you can't possibly focus on everything that's going on. But one thing that is undeniable is Andrew Robinson's performance. And I mention a lot how I hated Julian Bashir. I won't lie to you guys. I won't lie through my teeth. I hated Julian Bashir for the first few seasons.
Did any of us actually like Julian Bashir in the first few seasons of DS9? Because I hated Julian the first few seasons. Like, he was the only one I really couldn't stand. I wish he dropped dead. I wish he'd disappear. This is nothing to do with Siddig. I love Siddig.
I realized I didn't want him to drop dead in front of me when he was treating Garrick for a head injury in the Defiant. I believe the episode was A Time to Stand, and he was wearing that cute uniform, and I thought, I don't want anything bad to happen to him. But even throughout The Wire, I still hated Julian. But both Julian and Garrick's characters have one thing in common, and it is that they were really polarizing characters. Garrick, I mean, I'm trying to pick a word that's not offensive, because I do love Garrick in a different way than I love Julian Bashir or Kira Nerys or Jadzia Dax. I love him because of what Andrew made him, but as a character, sometimes he was a lot. I'll just say that. And sometimes Julian Bashir was also a lot. But I feel like this episode left a lot of us with a different impression of both characters. We really get a different perspective to Garrick, and that's not to say that we all just miraculously went to loving him, but we were able to sort of sympathize with him much more, and we were able to see sort of his side of things. And I love how when Odo was coming to the door and said, I have cases I need to close, and I think Garrick knows a lot about these cases, a lot of things that can help me finalize these cases, Julian stood his ground and said, no, I'm the chief medical officer here. This is my patient. This is my lane, and get out of it. You are not getting to my patient. In times of crisis, Julian really shows up. He does his job. He does it well, and he's not going to let anyone boss him around. Andrew Robinson's performance was chef's kiss. I really have nothing to say. I have no notes. I don't want to dwell on The Wire because it's another episode I can talk quite a bit about. Past tense. Did you guys know that past tense, it's part 1 and part 2, but part 2 is directed by the Jonathan Frakes. So I found that out today. If you guys knew that, well, if you didn't, I just told you all about it. We all know why this episode is on this list. I mentioned many times that Deep Space Nine really introduced serialization, and it affected a lot of the way television is consumed today. They did something back then that not a lot of shows were willing to do, and they stood their ground even though they weren't getting the viewers or the love that they deserved. They stuck to their guns and they believed in serialization, and I love them for it because a lot of these episodes were not something that were not topics or themes or slogans that were going to be wrapped up in a 45-minute episode. You cannot tell me that Past Tense is an episode that would have just been tied up in a neat little bow in a 45-minute episode. It just wasn't going to happen. This episode needed a part 2 and a proper conclusion. What do I love about this episode? What is there not to love about this episode? I mentioned this on TikTok, but I love how Julian says many times, I'm not a historian. I don't remember historical events accurately. Don't trust on my knowledge of history.
Thank you, Ensign.
Wait a minute, aren't you two wearing the wrong color?
Don't you know anything about this period in time?
I'm a doctor, not an historian.
And Benjamin is the exact opposite. He is well versed in the 21st century. He knows all about the sanctuary districts, the socio-economic and political crisis on Earth during the time. And Julian is like enraged. He's like, but how don't these people have the medical facilities? But how isn't the government taking care of them? But how aren't they more compassionate and more, what's the word for it? More aware of each other and what's going on. And Benjamin is the exact opposite. He feels that anger and that sadness inside, and he's more of a cold calm because he's well versed in the history of the time, where Julian is witnessing it firsthand. Benjamin already knows all about it. And later on in the series, there's an episode called Little Green Men, and I love how Nog is looking at his pad and he's like, this Gabriel Bell looks a lot like Captain Sisko. I love that callback to this episode. I love how it's like direct social commentary of today. I know we didn't get the Bell riots, guys. We didn't get the Bell riots, which is not something to be sad about, obviously, but we're kind of living them anyway. We're kind of living through the timeline anyway. Things are not looking well for us, not looking bright for us. We need ourselves a Gabriel Bell. Okay, this is a two-parter, again, Improbable Cause, but I'm specifically going to talk about the Dias cast. Improbable Cause is directed by the Avery Brooks as well. I'm going to go really, I have 4 bullet points about Improbable Cause because I don't want to just completely eliminate it. Garak blows up his own shop like a boss. The Romulans and the Tal Shiar really shoot themselves in the foot with this. They pave the way to their own destruction by deciding to just gung-ho go after the Dominion. Did they think it was going to end well? I think they did. It didn't. Remember how Gul Dukat was, it was the Way of the Warrior, and Garak calls Dukat over subspace to let him know that the Klingons may be invading Cardassia, and then they trade insults for a good 30 seconds or so. Gul Dukat is really smug and making snide comments about, oh, now that the order has fell, I guess you're going to be stuck in your tailor shop hemming women's dresses for the rest of your life, blah, blah, blah. Gul Dukat, I think the Obsidian Order was what was keeping all of you guys safe for all these years, or not safe, but giving Cardassia the appearance of strength, or at least putting up a really good front to deter outsiders like the Dominion from coming and destroying all of you. So I wouldn't be so smug if I were you. Hold up. Obviously, I'm not condoning the or intelligence organizations like the Tal Shiar or the Obsidian Order that police their citizens. That is in no way what I'm doing. I'm just saying the Dominion is also sort of like a dictatorship. So a dictatorship will understand another dictatorship. So the founder even says later on in the die is cast. What does the founder say to Garrick and Odo? Now that the Tal Shiar and the Obsidian Order has fallen, it'll be much easier for us to take over the Alpha Quadrant. The only thing standing in our way is the Klingons and the Federation, and I don't believe they'll be any match for us. So really, the Obsidian Order and the Tal Shiar, if they had just sat down and cooled off for a second, maybe things would not have gone the way they did, but that is pure speculation. The final handshake between Enabran and Garrick, oh my god, literally chills. But Garrick, well, Andrew, who obviously plays Garrick, is such a good, is so good at making you guess Garrick's motives, even after watching, what season is this? Even after watching 3 seasons of Garrick grow and change and transform, you are never sure what his motivations are. And when I first watched the episode, I thought that he was agreeing to Enabran's terms to get back at him and get that revenge that he so desperately wanted, because Andrew really gave off the air of Garrick is unpredictable. He may smile at you while all the while he's planning your demise. And I think Andrew would get a kick out of hearing that, because Garrick is just that type of character. You're not supposed to know what he's going to do. He doesn't want to be predictable. He wants that air of mystery. That's why he loves all of Bashir's speculations about his so-called spy past, even though he he makes a lot of jokes about it. What a scene. What a scene. What a scene. And it's the ending scene of Improbable Cause 2. That handshake was sinister. What was it, the director who gave that, whose direction was it to have Andrew go for Paul's elbow? I want to know. Or did Andrew just think of it? I want to know, because that was the final, that last touch. Woo, chills. Oh my god. If someone is watching this episode for the first time, tell me in the comments, or when you guys were watching this episode for the first time, let me know in the comments. Did you guys think he's gonna kill Enabran like I did? Or was I just really jumping to conclusions like Bashir? Let me know. Okay, now we're on to the Dias cast, and I have a lot more bullet points for this episode. Sisko choosing not to abandon Odo, even though the Admiral gives a direct order that the Defiant is supposed to stay and protect Bajor and the station. Love it. I have a rant that I'm going to rant during Waltz. So remember this point. I'm alluding to the rant I'm going to have. Because they do take the Defiant, and Sisko says, nope, we're going after Odo. So remember this point that I'm making right now, because I'm going to get back to it in Waltz. I have things to say. Oh my god, one of Odo's best lines. When he goes to Garrick, he's like, oh, you're going to torture me. Oh, please have mercy, Garrick. I love that line.
Oh, no. You're going to torture me, aren't you? How I've been dreading this. Please have mercy, Garrick.
Garrick tells Odo that they're actually quite similar, and they really are. And I feel like that's what allows Odo to move past Garrick torturing him and allows him to become acquaintances with Garrick, and then obviously they become friends as the season progresses on. Okay, Lovok, Odo, and then Garrick is standing here when the changeling who's portraying Lovok obviously says, come on, come join your people, just come with us, we know you want to be back in the Great Link. Oh my god, the way Garrick was watching Odo's face when Odo says, I'm sorry, I would love to come with you guys, but I can't. I'd love to return home, but I won't. Not like this. I empathize and sympathize with Garrick, because Odo is able to say no so readily, so easily, because he reconciled with his people so much later in his life. He didn't grow up on the home world, and he wasn't immersed in his own culture. For many years, he thought he was the only shapeshifter. But Garrick, he grew up on Cardassia. He obviously misses his position, his high standing, being respected for his career, his job, his position in the Order, being the protege of Enabran Tain. But I think after many years in exile, those things pale in comparison to missing the air on Cardassia, the food, the water, the culture, his people. everything. And this really brings me back to one of my favorite episodes on The Next Generation, which is The Defector. It's James Sloyan, and he plays Jarok in the episode. But he also plays Professor Mora on this show. And I just also found that out today, and I got a kick out of that because I was like, damn, like I love watching any episode. There was only 2, I believe, with Professor Mora, and I was like, this guy is amazing. I love his acting. And then I realized he plays Jarok on The Next Generation, that episode, The Defector, which is one of my favorite episodes. When he realizes that he can't go back to Romulus and Data takes him into the holosuite to see the river and the stars, it's not his job that he missed that made him take his own life. It was not being able to see his family again, not being able to watch his daughter grow up, not being able to see the Romulan sky, the stars, the valleys, eat the food, immersed in the culture. That's what makes him take his own life, not his losing his job or his high-ranking position. And I feel like that's why Garak allowed himself to become swept up in Enabran's storm, because obviously he misses his people, misses his culture, and I have sympathy and empathy for him. I totally get him, and I feel like that's why Odo, it doesn't hold it against him in the long run. I might lose some of y'all for saying this, but Garak quotes Shakespeare not to Enabran, at Enabran, while the Jem'Hadar and the Dominion are blowing their ships to bits. What comes to his mind? A Shakespeare play. His human best friend badgered him into reading so that they could have literature debates during their lunches, their weekly lunches. You're telling me that these two are just friends? Girl, Garashir is real, and I stand by that statement. So, if you guys don't think it's real, be a little bit for real. Be so for real. Okay, that's my slogan. When the Admiral tells Cisco that he's not going to press any formal charges, I was shocked. Where are these admirals, these decent admirals who don't go power mad and despotic as soon as they get their admiralty? Where are these admirals, and where is this man? Why did he never come back for any other episode on this show? I wanted this admiral to come back and show the other admirals what it's like to be a decent human being. That final scene, let's give Andrew and Renee their flowers, because that final scene, obviously, just like I thanked Aaron, and we all thank Aaron for giving us a beautiful performance as Nog, let's all thank Renee for giving us a stunning performance as Odo. And I feel like, obviously, no one else could have played Nog, no one else could have played Odo. And I love scenes with Odo and Garak because I feel like both Renee and Andrew just play off each other so well, and I love that final scene. It makes you it made me hold my breath a little bit. I was emotional at the same time. I was also trying to obviously listen to the dialogue, listen to what they were saying, but it also just made me hold my breath. It's such a beautiful scene, and Andrew, under all that makeup, he was emoting. He was giving it all. He was giving us everything. And Odo's silhouette being seen when he's wiping the mirror, and that direction of not having Odo come and face Garak for their final discussion at the end. Whose direction was that? I don't know. Or was it in the script originally? I don't know how that scene came to be, but however it came to be, it was such a good decision. The Way of the Warrior, Parts 1 and 2. The Khitomer Accords are no longer protecting the Federation or Starfleet from the Klingons' wrath. And I love how this is our first introduction to General Martok, who we don't know at the time is a changeling, but yes, he is. When he first meets with Cisco and Kira, he's insistent that everyone just cuts into their hand and begins bleeding themselves to prove that they're not changelings. And later, of course, we realize that his insistence is to cover up the fact that he's actually a changeling. And this brings me back to that scene in Homefront. Is Homefront after this, I believe? Yeah, Homefront is episode 10 in season 4. And Joseph Sisko, which is obviously Benjamin's father, says that
I was a smart shapeshifter, a really good one. The first thing I would do would be to grab some poor soul off the street, absorb every ounce of his blood, and let it out on cue whenever someone like you tried to test me. Don't you see? There isn't a test that's been created a smart man can't find his way around.
General Martok in this scene, it always comes to mind. I feel bad for Worf, and I've felt bad for Worf since The Next Generation, because he's always stuck between choosing the Klingon Empire and choosing between Starfleet and the Federation, and the way of the warrior really, poor Worf. I've loved Worf since The Next Generation, even though in Deep Space Nine he really did begin to get on my nerves. This is not a criticism against Michael. We love Michael. I love the scene where everyone is in the wardroom discussing how they're gonna let the Cardassians know that the Klingon fleet is approaching to destroy them without exactly telling them, and bringing down the wrath of the Klingons on them and alerting Starfleet that they went against their orders. And Sisko is just light on his feet, quick thinking. As always, he's like, well, let's bring Mr. Garrick into the fold for a minute or two. I love that. And I read a Reddit post. I told you guys I live on Reddit. I read a post and someone, I'm going to paraphrase here, but they said, it's difficult for me to choose which captain is my favorite because I feel like each captain really suits their purpose well. Kirk was really good for exploration and seeking out new life and new civilizations, and he really had the soul of an adventurer. Jean-Luc was really well versed in diplomacy and avoiding conflict, and he was good at keeping the peace. Sisko was the only man who could have won the Dominion War and really keep the Alpha Quadrant really from sinking. And he was the man for the task of bringing Bajor into the Federation and rebuilding Bajor after the occupation. And Janeway was the only one who could have really gotten the Starship Voyager out of the Delta Quadrant. I haven't seen Enterprise yet, so forgive me, I don't know what's going on there, but I love what the person said. It's so true. Everyone, like, it is difficult to choose because each captain really serves their objective well. So when I see, this is my personal opinion, when I see people roasting Sisko for not doing exactly what Starfleet tells him to do all of the time, or what the Prime Directive sort of says is necessary, I'm just like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Captain Kirk got to go off, explore, deal with the occasional Klingon or Romulan. Jean-Luc was more so dealing with the Romulans and then sort of the Maquis at the end. Sisko is on a station in the middle of deep space after the Cardassian occupation wrecked Bajor. His post is something he did not request. His wife is dead after Wolf 359. He has to raise his son alone, be a single parent, be both mom and dad. His first officer isn't a Starfleet officer. She's part of the Bajoran militia. She is not working with him in the first few seasons. She actually despises the fact that the Federation is here. The station is all Cardassian technology, and it's not compatible with Starfleet technology and Federation technology. The chief of operations, Miles O'Brien, is struggling with the computers. There's chief of securities, Odo, and he does not want to fill out the log entries and do all of Starfleet protocol. Julian Bashir is just there. He doesn't really annoy Sisko. They don't really interact as often enough. Sisko is neck deep in problems. Of course he's gonna be like, bro, I do not have time to go by the book. I do not have time to go by the manual all of the time. And even if he did, like, he was in the middle of deep space with, like, if he called reinforcements, they would be days away. He can't just play things and go by the book. What are you roasting him for? What is he supposed to do? Let the Cardassians walk all over him? Literally, in episode 1, Emissary, as soon as the Enterprise leaves and they realize the Federation presence is gone and that Sisko and the crew of Deep Space Nine is all alone, Dukat comes on the station and requests shore leave for all of his men, and the Cardassians who were gone are suddenly kind of back. What is Sisko supposed to do? Literally, someone please tell me. I'm done with my rant. Okay, this makes me laugh time and time again. The Defiant lowers their shield, they're beaming over the members of the Detapa Council, and it's like multiple evacuation parties, and Dukat is the first one off the ship, and he's like, Captain, we can't leave, there's still council members on the ship that's getting blown up to bits by the Klingons. Why are you here? Why are you saving yourself? Why are you one of the first people on board the Defiant? You should be staying on your ship, making sure the council members are safe first before beaming yourself over. You are selfish time and time again. It makes me laugh. And then he has the nerve, the gall to tell Garrick, oh, are you trying to suck up to the council members and protect them in order to secure a new position and come back to Cardassia and prove your patriotism, blah 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 blah. Bro, you saved yourself. What would have happened if Sisko couldn't save the remaining council members? What would you have told the Cardassian government? Well, I beamed over. I was certain the others were going to make it too. I swear I was certain. Dukat, you are a fool and a half.
Transporter Bay, what's our status?
Captain, this is Dukat. Almost half the council members are still aboard my ship. We need at least another minute.
I love Avery as Sisko. I love watching that man fight. He is fierce. I remember in Invasive Procedures when Sisko was beating that Klingon up. He would have succeeded in killing him too if it wasn't for that other girl with the gun to the back of the head. And in Apocalypse Rising, he beats up that other Klingon, and he's like, don't get in the way of my blood wine, get out of the way, blab all you want. I love watching Sisko fight. That man can subdue grown Klingons, which have 3 times probably, Vulcans have 3 times the size of humans, so God knows the strength of a Klingon against Benjamin Sisko. And I love in Apocalypse Rising, Ben says that he was captain of the wrestling team in the academy like 22 years ago. I don't know. I love that detail. I love watching my girl Kira kick ass as usual. Oh my God. When that Klingon stabs her in the side when I was watching Way of the Warrior the first time, you could just hear my heart crack. I thought she was a goner for a second. Ooh. We're moving on to The Visitor. The Visitor. Tony Todd is playing the older version of Jake in this episode, and as we all know, Tony Todd plays Kern, who's Worf's brother. He plays him in Sons of Moog. He also was, his role was originally in The Next Generation. I haven't finished Voyager yet, but I read online that he is in a couple of episodes of Voyager as well. I love Tony Todd so much. As we all know, we lost him recently, and I thank him, as we all thank him, for his contribution to Deep Space Nine. Another brilliant actor. When I first watched a lot of Kern's scenes in The Next Generation, I didn't really get a vibe. I didn't really get a feel for his character. But when I watched Sons of Moog, like, I felt oddly emotional in like the last few scenes. And I don't know, in Deep Space Nine, he just gave a whole different perspective to Kern. And especially in The Visitor, it's an episode when I first watched, I bawled my eyes out, as many of us did. When I went back to watch it a second time, I thought, there's no way I'm gonna cry that hard again. I did. I'm proud to say I did. And that is just a tribute to how amazing of an actor he is. Sirach really, he was amazing in this episode too, but I have to hand it to Tony. He broke my heart. Really, this episode breaks my heart. I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. Tony got us again, guys. I learned this recently. Did you know the woman who plays Melanie, the writer in this episode, is actually Andrew Robinson's daughter? I didn't know that until like a month ago, and I found it out, and it made me so like happy. I don't know why. It's like these people are my family. Like, I don't know. I have like a weird, like, not parasocial attachment, but like I have like a weird attachment to Deep Space Nine. So when I heard that it was Andrew's daughter, I don't know, it just made me so happy. And The Visitor is crazy because it's like loosely canon. Jake is 18 in this episode when he loses his father. Obviously in the finale, Jake is not 18 when Ben is taken by the prophets. But this episode is not prophetic, but the circumstances are different. But you feel relief at the end of this episode, The Visitor, because you think, oh, we avoided the crisis avoided. And then you get to the finale and it's kind of like, wait, I was relieved for nothing. Oh, did you guys realize that Jake writes Anselm? And it's one of the books that Melanie talks about. He writes Anselm in, what episode was it? The Muse with Onaya. Remember that alien? She basically sort of gives him the inspiration to write the book that he writes, and it's Anselm. And then in this episode, obviously, Anselm is a published book. In The Muse, he wasn't able to finish it, and he thinks, oh, I didn't write it. She basically wrote it. And his father assures him, no, those words, those feelings, those experiences, they all came through you. We are on Apocalypse Rising. Okay, when I first watched Apocalypse Rising, I wasn't like a diehard fan. I was like, it's an okay episode. I didn't get why they started off season 5 with this episode, but I watched it a second time like a week and a half ago. I get it. I'm converted. I get it now. I get why it starts off the season. I get why it's such a badass episode. I love it now. Oh my God, I can't get enough of it. At the end of the episode, we see why Odo is chief of security. He has this sort of intuition, and it's a sort of humanoid intuition, obviously, that Data mentions in Data's Day on The Next Generation.
You may leave.
Commander Maddox, I have often wished for the sense that humans call intuition or instinct. Since Vulcans are incapable of lying, I must accept the Ambassador's explanation as the truth. But I would still prefer a gut feeling to back up this conclusion.
She's a Vulcan. I'm supposed to believe what she's saying, but I have this inkling of like doubt in the back of my mind, but I can't exactly call it doubt because I don't feel anything. So Odo has intuition, something that would be characterized as a humanoid trait. And I get a kick out of that. The first 5 minutes of the episode, the crew makes a point during a briefing about how obsessive Klingons are with their blood screenings. Okay, I wrote this down because it came to me today, literally. They are theorizing that the changeling impersonating Gowron must have found his way around the blood screenings, because how else is he supposed to take over and get past the blood screenings? He must have found a way around it. But this is a callback, I believe, to how insistent General Martok was about the blood screenings when he first met with Kira and Sisko. He was like, come on, we all have to make sure we are who we say we are. So he must have really brought that vigilance with him and probably influenced Gowron. So now the Klingons are really gung-ho about the blood screenings and everything. And then I'm thinking about how disciplined the Klingons were, and in contrast, in Way of the Warrior, when Dukat is rescued, Sisko says, Bashir, not only prepare for casualties, prepare for blood screenings. I want to make sure that the Klingons weren't actually right. Maybe the Cardassian government leaders are really founders. Dukat was so resistant to getting a blood screening, and Bashir had to really put his foot down and be like, nope, you aren't going nowhere. You're getting your blood screened, or I'll get a security officer to do it for you. Dukat was so resistant. Think of the other government officials, members of the Datapa Council, members of the Central Command. Think, if everyone was as resistant to getting blood screenings as Dukat, it's no wonder the Klingons thought that the changelings had succeeded in taking over Cardassia. The Klingons are hyper-vigilant in their blood screenings. And the Cardassians, especially government officials, it's like pulling teeth, getting them to do a simple blood screening. And that's probably how that rumor even got started in the first place about Cardassia being overrun with changelings. I love how Sisko fires one shot at the changeling portraying Martok, and then all the Klingons turn and start dusting the guy. It makes me laugh. Oh my God, no hesitation. Whoop, everyone turns, toasts the guy. Okay, we are in Nor the Battle to the Strong. Many viewers, I believe, view Bashir as less well equipped for like darker times or more difficult circumstances. But when it's time to get down to business, roll up his sleeves and be serious, Bashir has always shown himself to be very capable, and I knew that he was going to rise to the challenge, rise to the occasion. But I was thinking how if Jake were stranded with someone like Worf, or someone like Jadzia, or someone like Miles, who is obviously a veteran, their heroic sort of strength and bravery and courage obviously would make Jake seem less superior and like more inferior. But Bashir is someone who people view as more unlikely, and he's not exactly the strongest, the fastest. I mean, he is genetically engineered, obviously, but we don't know that yet until much later. So him being partnered with Jake in this episode, I think, is really interesting, because Jake obviously proves to be less well equipped during these times of war and learns that it's no laughing matter, and Bashir really rises to the occasion, and I love to watch this episode. I mentioned this a lot, obviously, that I even mentioned it for past tense, that a lot of episodes need a part 2. They aren't going to be wrapped up in a 45-minute episode, and I'm shocked, but I'm clapping and taking my hat off to the writers, the directors, the cast, the crew who were a part of Deep Space Nine, and particularly this episode, Nor the Battle to the Strong. They fit such a nuanced, wonderful episode in 45 minutes. It literally told us and depicted to us the horrors of war that a lot of other treks would have struggled to portray in 45 minutes. And a lot of times Star Trek is more lighthearted, and if it's talking about a more difficult subject, we sort of glaze over the more gruesome aspects, because obviously we want the material we're showing on TV to be something available to all viewers that everyone can watch. But I feel like this episode was necessary, and I applaud everyone who's a part of this episode. I think it's a beautiful episode. Next is In Purgatory's Shadow and By the Inferno's Light. That is season 5, episode 14 and 15, according to Netflix. By Inferno's Light, the Khitomer Accords were reinstated. I love how we get to see Martok in the prison camp, and this obviously leads up to Martok being a recurring character and being Worf's sort of right hand. No, Worf is his right hand man. I have nothing but good things to say about this two-parter. What is there to say? I love how Ben figured it out that the ships around them that they thought were poised to attack were illusions. I love the depiction of Garrick's claustrophobia, which we obviously later in season 7, and I think after Image, I may be telling the wrong episode, I think it's the 3rd or 2nd episode, this is like a mention of his claustrophobia. I love how Andrew played. Can I help you? I love how Andrew played Garrick in this episode specifically. I believe that Andrew has claustrophobia in real life as well, so obviously that lended to the character. But yeah, this two-parter was great. I loved it. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, gives us more insight into the Dominion, dealings with the Jem'Hadar. Love it. I'm moving quickly because I'm sure this video is going to be like over an hour long. I'm looking at it and I think it is. Next is Dr. Bashir, I presume. Another episode, just like Apocalypse Rising, where I didn't get it. I didn't get the hype when I first watched it. I watched it a second time 2 weeks ago, I believe, and now I love it. It's one of my favorite episodes. It made it into the list. This episode made me do mental gymnastics trying to justify things Bashir did in the past episodes, or justify things he wasn't able to do, like things that would have required strength, speed, quick thinking, things like that. Obviously, I'm not roasting the writers or anything. It was like, this came out of nowhere, this episode, but no hate. The episode starts with Bashir and O'Brien playing darts, and Julian, I think, says, "I don't need your charity, just play the game." And then they end the episode, and what does O'Brien say? He says, "Don't patronize me. If you're going to play the game, play the game." I love that parallel from start to finish. I told you guys I started Voyager. I'm in the middle of season 2. I don't care how Voyager is planning to redeem Zimmerman, the EMH. I don't care. I hate him for what he did to our man Bashir. And objectifying Lita, love him for that. That's sarcasm in case you couldn't tell. Cisco tells Zimmerman, you're not thinking of replacing real doctors, are you, with these EMHs and LMHs? And Zimmerman gets all mad and offended, like, of course not. Cisco was right, and he should say it. He meant exactly what he said. We're in the 21st century. We're going into a new year, and there's a lot of talk about AI and robots taking over people's jobs and this and that. Cisco was right, and he should say it. Zimmerman annoyed me in this episode. I wanted to deck him in the face. Oh my God. Brian George plays, obviously, Bashir's father, and that final hug at the airlock when Julian says that he'll visit him at his facility if there's visiting hours, like, their father-son relationship is not something that's just gonna be repaired within a day. And in times of crisis, sometimes people come together, and it was not going to happen that way either. So that hug, that final embrace, really reflected that. It was sort of like a stiff hug, but it's like showing that both characters like are paving the way to mend that relationship. And I love that little detail at the end. And I believe Fadwa, the actress who plays Bashir's mother, Amsha, I think she was beautiful as well. That final speech about why she went through, why she agreed to genetically enhance her son, I love it. Whether you disagree with what she did or agree with what she did, she got her point across respectfully without manipulating her son or belligerently just yelling and screaming at him like his father does. And she understood what Julian needed at that time, and it was empathy. And she understood that she would have to face his rage and his wrath, but she was willing because she wanted to be heard and she wanted her son to hear her. And that's the most important thing of all. So I love how she played that scene. She was calm, she was brave, she was compassionate, and she still got her point across. Whether we agree or disagree, she made a decision. She wasn't justifying what she did, but she wanted her son to understand. And I love how she played that scene. Next, Waltz. And Waltz is directed by Renee. I learned this today. Jadzia and Benjamin are friends for 2 lifetimes. Keep that in mind because I'm about to go on a rant. Remember, oh, I gotta sit up for this. Hold on. Remember in the episode where, I think, what was it, the die was cast, where the crew goes after Odo with the Defiant, going against the Admiral's and Starfleet's explicit orders because Benjamin says we're not gonna leave Odo. Remember that? Yeah. Well, Kira has direct orders from Starfleet to go, for the Defiant to look for survivors because a lot of the ships were destroyed, people left their escape pods, and there's cargo and Federation, what was it? Federation citizens, soldiers, I'm not sure, with the cargo, and they need the Defiant to escort them out of the war zone. So when they're looking for survivors and they have a deadline, but the Defiant has to leave or else they'll risk losing the cargo and the people guarding the cargo, Julian has been making his statement towards the beginning of the episode. He tells Kira, what about Captain Sisko? If we just go after the cargo, we risk not being able to save him. And Kira says, I raised the same objections myself, but Starfleet was very clear what we have to do. And then later, Julian stands up to Worf and he says, I do not want to leave Captain Sisko behind just because you think not fulfilling your commitment would be dishonorable. Miles seems on board, Jadzia seems kind of on board, and then Worf tells Bashir, get off the bridge, Doctor, you're dismissed. Girl, she has been friends with Benjamin for 2 lifetimes. And okay, the cargo is important, the people guarding the cargo are Federation, the Starfleet, whatever, they're important too, I get it, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Jadzia did not even object. And Julian is objecting. She didn't come to his aid. She didn't say a thing. She just said, it doesn't matter what we think, guys. It matters what Worf thinks because he's the captain. This man has been your friend for 2 lifetimes and you have not a word to say. If it was my friend who we were, and not just my friend, my best friend who was in one of those escape pods, we needed to save them. Oh, you would have to escort me off the bridge. You would probably have to court-martial me. I would be saying my piece before I got escorted off the bridge. All of a sudden, what? She's involved with Worf and she couldn't even open her mouth? What? Literally what? O'Brien sort of said a couple words. Bashir sort of said a couple words. And Jadzia had not one thing to say. Not one thing to say. She didn't even come to Julian's defense, bro. He was off the bridge with no argument. Jadzia, she really disappointed me there. She did. Because Sisko went back for Odo, and Odo is not his best friend or his best man or someone he's known for 2 lifetimes, but because Sisko is a decent person. And I know that obviously the missions were different. Obviously, the Defiant was in charge of protecting Bajor, but Federation ships were coming. They were like 2 days away, and they were going to be there anyway. Something could have gone really wrong while the Defiant was away. Bajor could have been attacked. But Sisko said, no, I'm not going to leave Odo at the hands of the Dominion. So you couldn't stand up for your friend of 2 lifetimes and say, hey, Worf, maybe take a chill pill. We should try to look for our man Ben. Jadzia, I was so disappointed. I was disappointed. Because I know if O'Brien or Bashir was sitting in that chair, she would have advocated for her friend Ben. She would have. But suddenly, she couldn't say anything to Worf. I don't know. She made me angry. My rant is over. Mark Alimo delivered in that episode. The whole season, Dukat is insistent that he views the Bajorans as his children, that everything that went wrong during the occupation was not their fault. It was his fault as their father. He tried to lead with a gentle hand. He tried to increase food rations. He tried to do X, Y, Z to make the occupation run smoother. It was the Central Command that was breathing down his neck, wanted him to get the mission done immediately, blah, 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 blah. The whole series, he was trying to redeem himself in the eyes of anyone who would give him the time of day, anyone who would be receptive enough to hear him. And finally, he vomits that he hates the Bajorans. Surprise, surprise. He wishes he'd exterminated all of them, killed all of them. I was like, finally, we can stop repeating lies and tell the truth. This episode reminds me of like a thriller film, because basically Ben is hostage with maniacal Dukat. And yes, in the beginning of the episode, he feels bad for him. He even says in his little, it's like his inner thoughts we're hearing at the beginning of the episode. Ben says he lost an empire, he lost his daughter, he can't go back to Cardassia, he's in jail, he's gonna have to face trial, he may be put away, he had to seek help, like psychological help. Isn't that enough? Isn't that enough punishment for one man?
Maybe I prefer to think of him as a crazy man, a broken man. He'd be less dangerous that way. He lost an empire, he lost his daughter, and he nearly lost his mind. Whatever his crimes, isn't that enough punishment for one lifetime?
And he still tries to feel sympathy for him, not condemn him. But it just shows that not even in a bad way, just Dukat mentally is really not there and is so far gone. And this episode really is the point of no return. Because before, in Dukat's own weird, twisted, perverse way, he had mercy. But after this episode, he kills Jadzia. He turns to the Pa Wraiths. He forms a cult. He tries to seek alliance in Kai Wynn. He does it all. He does it all and more. He rains his wrath of hell down on Ben and everyone else around him. So that little minuscule crumb of mercy that he owns was gone in this episode, turned to dust. Far Beyond the Stars. Far Beyond the Stars was obviously directed by the Avery Brooks, and I mentioned Far Beyond the Stars in one of my TikTok videos. In an interview, I believe Ira mentions that Sirach mentions that a lot of the books on Benny Russell's desk were brought in by Avery. A lot of the music was Avery's influence. Some of the clothes and hats, I believe at the time, Ira mentions, was Avery's influence. Don't quote me on the clothes part. But it's a beautiful episode. I have not much to say because anyone who doesn't like this episode needs to get their head checked. It's like a piece of art. It's like the shining, crowning jewel of Deep Space Nine, and I love it. In the Pale Moonlight, I love In the Pale Moonlight. I love any opportunity that we get to have scenes with Avery and Andrew. I love how both actors, it's like, especially in like the later scenes, like it's like a fire that just goes ablaze, like destroying everything in its path. I love how Sisko doesn't realize he's being manipulated. He thinks he has a hold on Garrick until the very end when everything spirals out of control. We can debate all day if you believe that what Sisko did was justified or not, right or wrong, but he didn't do it for himself. It wasn't selfish reasons. He did it for the entirety of the Alpha Quadrant, and if he lost a few hours of good sleep at night, it was worth it, because he did something that not a lot of other Starfleet officers, not a lot of other captains would be capable of doing. It's like I mentioned before, sometimes playing by the rules, especially in a place like Deep Space Nine, was just not gonna go in his favor. It wasn't gonna work. So In the Pale Moonlight is a prime example of that. Our last episode, I know it's a fun one and some of you are gonna be like, huh, but it is Bada Bing Bada Bang. And I think a lot of people don't get or aren't as inclined to pick episodes with Vic Fontaine or like Holosuite episodes, but this is one of my favorite Holosuite episodes. And obviously we lost James Darren recently, and we also thank him for what he contributed to Deep Space Nine. He brought such, like, his character, and that holosuite was like a little safe haven in the midst of such chaos, war, darkness, catastrophe. Vic Fontaine's bar really was like a safe haven for everyone. I love opportunities that we get to see the crew of Deep Space Nine just let loose and have fun, because they don't always get that opportunity. They're always dealing with one thing or another, and it's tiring. Their lives are tiring. So I love that they were just able to deal with the mafia during the 1960s in Las Vegas or wherever the bar is. I don't know, I love this episode. I think it's fun. I think it's very entertaining. I love the costumes. Whoever designed the costumes, taking my hat off to you, amazing. I love the duet between Ben and Vic, The Best Is Yet to Come. I play that song a lot on YouTube. For like the past month, I've been playing it like obsessively. Can someone get that song on Spotify, please? Like, this is my petition to get that song on Spotify. Yeah, that's all I have to say for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is my first Deep Space Nine video, my first Star Trek video, and I hope to film many, many more. Please leave all your thoughts, anything you want to tell me in the comments. One of my favorite things was interacting with you guys in the comments on TikTok. I hope we can do the same thing here. To the cast, crew, directors, writers, producers, anyone who had a hand in Deep Space Nine, thank you. Thank you for this masterpiece of a show. It's my comfort show. I feel like some shows you need to be in a certain mood to watch. There's an episode on Deep Space Nine for any and every mood. The characters are like my family. The actors are like my family. This is truly the best Trek, and I say that here with certainty. My favorite Trek, the best Trek. I wish we could have gotten more content from them. Where is the behind the scenes, guys? Come on now, give us something. Give us a crumb, give us something. If any of the cast, crew, anyone sees this video, I love you guys so much. Guys, if we can get Nana to see this video, we're married in my head. I love her. Thank you for giving us Kira. Oh my God. If anyone can get Avery to see this video, thank you for giving us Cisco. In my mind, the best captain. What else is there to say? I'm going to be filming many more videos. I have a whole entire list of them, so don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I'll leave it somewhere on the screen. This is going to be a long video, and I talked a lot. I will be leaving now. Bye, guys!